School project, and I have 3 students asking me questions, and they are.
Jawad Khan.
Zachary Kiesel.
And Brian Douglas.
Thank you.
All right.
So if you'd like to proceed with the questions, I'm ready to go.
All right, so our first question is going to be, what changes did the school make to accommodate the new bus students?
Okay. And to put a context on your question, for people who might be seeing this, I want to mention that the school district was the Rochester City School Districts. It was in 1970, and they were addressing a court order to desegregate the schools of Rochester to deal with de facto segregation. It wasn't segregation that had been intentional, it was just kind of the way the city had evolved. So the year that the school system decided to address the de facto segregation, they instituted a rather massive busing system, which in one way was the school district's first approach to dealing with racial parity in the city. And I think it was a very well thought out system. I think they tried to minimize the impact on individuals. They tried to minimize the amount of distance that students would need to be bused, but it still had some negative ramifications. As we got into the school year and they realized that it wasn't going quite as well as they had intended, they organized some community groups to talk to parents, to deal with issues that had come up after the busing had started. We also instituted a system whereby we had faculty members who were volunteering to ride the buses in the morning on the way to school and in the afternoon on the way home from school to deal with some of the dissension among the students. So as I said, they reached out to the community, and then they used their internal resources to try and reach out to the students by having us actually participate in the bus rides.
Okay, that's great. Our second question is going to be, what was the general reaction from the staff at CCBC after the increase in minorities?
Well, in the thread of, I guess, minority relations in Maryland, the demographics at CCBC have been shifting ever so slightly for a long number of years as the demographics in Baltimore County have changed. And I think overall the reaction at CCBC was a very positive one. You might attribute that to our well-intentioned faculty and staff, or you might attribute that to somewhat to how gradual the change had been. I think when change is gradual, it's very easy for people to make gradual changes to accommodate it with it. And of course, you would juxtapose that against the radical change that took place in my first teaching assignment, which was overnight. They went from schools that had been majority 90% or higher, just white students, to now probably an equal mix of minority and white students. So I think the change here was very, very well accepted.
Okay. Our third question is going to be, if at all, how much did outside racial tension affect CCBC students, and how did the faculty of CCBC deal with it?
Yeah, I guess the historical perspective from my point of view is that by the time our demographics began to shift, a lot of those racial issues in America at large had already been dealt with. I remember as a student in high school, I was privy to news of things like freedom riders in the South and, you know, significant racial disparities in America. And I think at that time, external factors were having a pronounced impact on schools in general. But by the time that our makeup began to shift in the late 70s and early 80s through the 90s, I think by that point America had pretty much resolved some of the more significant issues. I think there had already been some fairly dramatic shifts in America at large. So by that token, I don't think that there were really a lot of external forces acting on CCBC. I think probably the largest external force was for us to be responsive to the community at large. So as the demographics of our county changed, it behooved us to be very responsible and representative. So I think in that sense it was a positive thing.
And our fourth and final question is going to be, if you had the opportunity to go back in time, is there anything that you would change about CCBC's reaction to the way this change was presented and handled?
Well, if you give me the chance to go back in time, there are a bunch of other things I would change.
Yeah,
Going back to early childhood. You know, hindsight is always wonderful. It's been said that hindsight is 20/20 because you have the advantage of having lived through it, and then you reflect back and say, oh, if I could have relived that moment, or if I could have done it again. If I could change anything, it would probably be to have been more, I don't want to say inclusive, but to have been more proactive in dealing with the external community. Because as I said, the demographics of Baltimore County were changing. I think the student mix began slowly to evolve here, and I think as such we were, as an institution, able to kind of go with the flow and evolve with it. The thing that was missing from our dealing with our desegregation, our change in racial mixture versus the first school system was we didn't have any formal meetings with community leaders. I think it would have been very advantageous for us at that point in time when we realized that we were going to be a different institution with a different constituent student population to have maybe taken some effort and say, let's reach out to the larger community. Let's get some community groups involved. What is it that they would like to see have us do in terms of our response to this? Are there special programs they would like to see us have us do? Are there special needs now that we're not aware of that we should be aware of? So I think internally we managed the change fairly well. That might have been even a better response on our part had we involved external groups and external agencies and gotten them involved. So if I could do anything, it would be, okay, well, let's be much more proactive. Let's have some community meetings. Things along that nature.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Really appreciate the time.